أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين أما بعد brothers and sisters in Iman, Salaam alaikum. The gathering that we have this morning has basically to do with the issue of Khums, and this is based on actually a seminar that we have done a year ago in Khums. And since the question came up that it might also be relevant here, so we'll use that opportunity. And then of course we have the question answer session with it. As usual, we of course begin with the ayat of Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Anfal, ayat number 41. That's about the issue of Khums or Khums. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. This is an ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that verily you should know that whatever you acquire, غَنِمْتُم, whatever you acquire, a fifth of that belongs to Allah and for the messenger and the near relative, referring to the near relative of the Prophet. According to our tafsir, that applies to the Imam who is at the time from al-Mu'minin to our present Imam. And وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and the needy people, the orphans, the needy, the stranded travelers, from Ali Muhammad, from the descendants of the Prophet. And so that's basically the Quranic base for this system of Khums, which was there during the days of the Prophet, according to the 50 sources of Shia and Sunni alike. There is no dispute about it that when the Prophet was alive, Khums was practiced. I'll just give you one example from Sayyid Bukhari. When a tribe of Bani Abdul Qais came to the Prophet, and this was a tribe which was not easily able to travel to Mecca, because between Medina and their location there were non-Muslim tribes in between. So they were in a kind of a weak political position. They didn't have the ability to go visit the Prophet in Medina that frequently. And so they asked him, is there advice that you would like to give to us that we can share with our people of our tribe? And the Prophet says, I advise you about 3 or 4 things. And in that list of 4 things in Sahih Bukhari, number 1, al-Iman. Then he talks about aqam al-salat, establishing prayers, ita al-zakat, to give in charity, وَأَن تُوَدُّوا إِلَيَّ خَمْسَ مَا غَنِمْتُمْ, and to convey to me the khums of whatever you acquire. They were not in the state of war, they were weak. They were more stronger political forces, tribes between Medina and the location of Bani Abdul Qais. And this here, Ghanimtum, basically refers to all kinds of profits that they acquire. And that's the basis of the Shi'i perspective as far as Khums is concerned. What happened after the Prophet? Very briefly, that when you look at the history as well as the prevailing views among the Sunni fuqaha, the system of Khums was suspended. Either they said, after Rasul there is no more room for it, or they said, it has to be given to the Khalifa, who will use it according to his own discretion for the Ummah. This was more or less a political decision made by them, just like in case of Qadr, it was taken away from Bibi Fatima sallallahu alayha. This was to deprive the family of the Prophet from any financial backing. And so even Khums was gradually eliminated from their system. Anyway, coming to the Masail as such, the first thing would be that the ayat says, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ, whatever of a thing you acquire. Basically, there are 7 items on which Khums becomes applicable. Number 1 and 2 are the most common one, the surplus or profit of the income, number 1. Number 2, legitimate wealth, which is mixed with some illegitimate wealth. If a person comes to a situation where he has acquired things, he's not able to really separate one from the other. If he knows what is halal or what is haram, it has different rulings. But if it's so much mixed up that he doesn't know, then one way is basically to pay khums. This doesn't mean that it's okay to acquire illegitimate wealth with the intention that at the end I'll pay the khums. No, this is talking about a situation where a person has gone through it and now he regrets and has a guilty conscience about it, what to do there. If the items are already known that this was obtained in an illegal manner and it belongs to so and so, then there is no issue of khums there. That has to be given back to the rightful owner of that money or items. Only when things are totally mixed up, where there is no ability by that person to separate one from the other, that's where khums comes as a way of wiping off the slate to start the financial year in a proper manner. The third item where khums becomes wajib, and 3rd to 7th are not really relevant to us at the moment. At least I don't know many Shias who are into this. Mines and minerals. Number 4, precious stones obtained from sea by diving. This probably applies more to the Shias in Bahrain. This is one of the trades that they have in that area. Number 5, treasures, if you are able to discover. Number 6, doesn't apply to us, a land that a Rizvi kafir buys from a Muslim in a Muslim country and in a Muslim society. And number 7, the spoils of war. We don't have the issue of Jihad Asghar during our time, so the most common issues as far as khums is relevant is number 1 and 2 in the list that we have. And therefore you will see in the books and even in the discussions that we have, we more talk about number 1, a little bit more about number 2. We don't cover the other areas, not because they are not part of the system, but we look at the relevance to the community in which we live. If it is, muftala bih, if it is relevant, yes, we'll talk about it. If it's not, we will leave it. If there is somebody who has mines and minerals, well, they can come and we'll talk about it individually. We don't want to burden the rest of the community who has nothing to do with that process, with the masail of that area of fiqh. Then it comes to the issue of the timing of khums. Many of these issues are known to you. We're just putting it there in a brief form. When to pay khums? Khums becomes wajib once a year at the end of your financial year. Now, you can fix that financial end of the year for yourself according to your choice. It doesn't have to be based on the Hijrah calendar. It could even be based on the common calendar. Actually, if you go with the common calendar, you end up gaining 10 days extra. So at least in 3 years you get one month, khums free there. But there is no problem, even if somebody does it with that intention, that I'll not go with Hijrah or Muharram or Rabiul Awwal, I'll go with December because I had get 10 more days there. There is no problem there at all. Even if somebody wants to move from one calendar to another, suppose somebody has considered end of Zulhijjah as the khums day for himself, and then he wants to go to the common calendar. they can do that. They should just look at the months which are, overlapping there. Suppose the Hijjah comes in August, and he wants to start a system where end of December he pays Khums. So then what he can do is he can pay his Khums at the end of the Hijjah, and then from August to December he has to do another calculation of that few months, pay Khums there, and from there onwards his new date will be according to the common calendar. The issue of Khums is that Khums is not like income tax. It is not the tax on the income of the person. It is actually on the surplus or the profit at the end of the year. And so it's important to understand that. Basically, when we talk about surplus or profit of the income, the items which will come in that would be any kind of income that a person earns, whether it's business or wages or salary or dividend income or any other means which is recognized by the Sharia. Similarly, when it comes to the things that people get in form of gift or prize or bonus, these are also applicable as far as Khums is concerned. When it comes to, there is a slightly difference in the fatwa. For example, Ayatollah Khoi and many other marajid used to say that if you get a gift, it is recommended to pay Khums on it. It's not wajib. But then you have people like Ayatollah Sistani who make it ihtiyat wajib, that even when it comes to gifts and hadiyah or tohfa that you get, it stays with you by that Khums date and you have not used it, there will be Khums on the value of that gift item. Similarly, if a person is a recipient of charity and sadaqah or zakat and Khums, and if they save at the end of the year, even though they are on the receiving end of charity, but if they have made a saving, there would be Khums on that also. And the last in that item we have is legacy. And by legacy, what we mean is not miras. Here we are talking about, somebody gets something from the will of somebody who he didn't even expect it. He was not a close family member, very remote, where his half doesn't come in there, or somebody, a stranger, maybe a friend, and that person allocated a portion of his estate, in the 1/3 of it, to this individual. So this is like a windfall, and therefore this will be considered like the item on which Khums would be wajib. Going on to the next one, are there any items which are exempted from Khums? Yes. Number one, mahr. At the time of marriage, the husband has to give mahr to the wife. Mahr is the haq of the bride. It is she who actually will demand what she wants. It is for the prospective bride to accept or negotiate the terms for that. So it comes from the proposal is from the girl's side, and the prospective bride is to accept it or negotiate that, and that is Khums free. So if they get mahr, there is no Khums on it. Similarly, when it comes to inheritance, there is no Khums on inheritance. Doesn't matter even if it's a huge amount. It's not the issue of how much. So mahr and inheritance is exempted from the Khums tax. Similarly, I'm not sure how common this would be in Tanzania, but in the Western countries, this issue of policy insurance is very common there. Compensation that a person receives for personal bodily injury. in the winter, maybe he was walking by in the front of somebody's house, but did not clear the snow, he slipped and hurt himself. Technically, it was the duty of the owner of the house to clear the snow on the walkway. If he didn't do it, this person has a right to sue him, and the insurance company will help the owner of the house to pay for that. And so if he gets a compensation of this kind, this will be again exempted from Khums, although it is a kind of a windfall, unexpected income, but there is no Khums on it. And it doesn't matter this item stays with individuals for years and years and years, because these are exempted. So it's not an issue that, a lady says, I have this in mahr, this money is sitting with me for 10 years, is there Khums on it? No, there's no Khums on it. Or if you got an inheritance which is staying with you for 20 years, there is no Khums on those items. A very simple matter that how do you, separate the issue of surplus or saving when you talk about paying Khums. You have your annual income minus whatever expenditure that you have for yourself and your dependents. Whatever remains after that is what we call the surplus or the saving on which Khums becomes wajib. And when we talk about the expenses of a person himself and the dependents, it doesn't mean that it's only for the dependents who are wajibun nafaqa. Because there are some individuals whose maintenance is wajib on you. The wife, the children, and the parents. But a person might have other relatives who is taking care of them, or orphans. So those expenses are also allowable expenses, and there will be no Khums on it. So any expenses about the person himself or the dependents, whether they are obligatory or non-obligatory, is a legitimate expense, and there will be no Khums on it. Just to give you an idea of what do we mean by allowable expenses, there's a long list, whether it's food and drink and accommodation, transportation, furniture, appliances, educational expenses, medical expenses, marriage expenses, Hajj, Ziyarat expenses, even if you go for Hajj every year. It's not that because you already done wajib, so if you go next time, you have to pay Khums on it. No, you can go, this is allowable, so there is no issue of paying Khums on it. Donations, sadaqat, religious dues, gifts, giving gifts to people, paying debts, legal penalties or wages of employees or insurance premium, membership dues, deduction from salary by the government. I'm sure there must be a system here also, just as it is in Canada. Those people who earn income, the employers have to take a portion of it for their pension plan, and that is mandatory. So that also is allowable expense because you don't even get it anyway. And whatever tax that you have to pay to the city or the province or the federal government, these are all allowable expense, and there is no Khums on it. Even paying of the loan or the debts that individuals have. This is also considered to be allowable expense. So suppose the person at the end of the Khums year has a saving of $10,000. And he also has a loan of, let's say, same amount or less than that. He has absolute right, if he wants, to pay off that loan. And so his savings will be reduced. And the amount of Khums will be automatically then reduced. So giving towards the payment of the debt is allowable expense from the Sharia point of view. Insurance premiums also, there is no problem. It is because taking out insurance is allowable in our fiqh. There is a confusion in the Sunni fiqh on this issue. They say, you should do tawakkul ala Allah. You shouldn't worry about what will happen in the future. Well, yes, we do tawakkul ala Allah, that Allah says, you also have to manage yourself. Because even when you plan for the future, things are not guaranteed. That's where you have to do tawakkul ala Allah. And so, when you take out insurance, whether it's for life insurance or medical issues, your property or your car or your items, these are all allowable expense, and there is no issue of Khums paying in premiums that you pay for the insurance. There is something in Canada, I think even in Tanzania, you have this issue of deduction of mandatory pension plan. Before when you get your salary, a portion is taken away by the employer, given to the government, and this becomes part of your retirement plan. Since you don't have the control on it, that will not be considered as your saving. It doesn't even come to you. And when that plan matures, and when the time comes for you to get it, whatever amount you get it, whether it's lump sum or they give the payments gradually, that amount in that year, when you receive it, will be considered to be the income of that year. Not the years when it was taken away from your salary, for a long time. So from that day when you receive it, then you count that as that year's income. If it's used up, it's not left there, and if it's not used up, it becomes part of your saving, and then you'll have to pay Khums on it. Saving for the future. What if we have some money, but we are planning to, do things in the near future, and we want to save the money for it? Is Khums wajib on it, or is Khums, exempted from it? The allowable expense only applies to the expenses of that year. If you keep money as a saving for an item in the future, then you will have to pay Khums on it. So if I have let's say some surplus at the end of the year, and I say, okay, I'm dedicating this to this work I want to do 2 years from now. Well, you have to pay Khums on it, because what you're going to do is not that year's expense and activity. It is going to happen in the future. There is, for example, a plan, I'm not sure whether it exists here or not, in Canada or US. There is something known as RRSP, Registered Retirement Saving Plan. This is not mandatory. Individuals are allowed every year, according to their income bracket, to put certain amount in this RRSP, a Retirement Saving Plan. If they do that, the government will not charge them the tax from that amount. So it's a tax-free way of, saving the money. So the question comes up, how do you deal with Khums on that issue? Since this is your own choice, it's not like the mandatory pension plan from the government. And since you are saving for the future, your Khums will be applicable in the initial amount that you are putting in the retirement saving plan. However, when we talk about this concept in the West, registered retirement saving plan, this money is then invested in different kinds of investment vehicles by the financial institutions, and that money earns in that plan. So it's not only what you're putting in. Every year the amount mostly increases, sometimes it goes down, but overall at the end of the time, when the retirement time comes, you get more than what you put into it. And so the question comes up, suppose I put a certain amount in the retirement plan, and now it is making money in the plan itself. Next year that has gone up. Do I pay Khums on the increment on an annual basis? No, because you cannot withdraw it. And so it's sitting there until when the time of retirement comes. That is where you will have to then separate what was your own initial, contributions, and what is the profit you had made. Whatever contribution you had made, you had paid khums on it, that will be khums free. Whatever increment that you have will be considered the income of that year if you withdraw it. Accordingly, again, it depends what are the laws and the regulations in different countries. And you will consider that to be income of that year, and it stays with you for 1 year, there will be khums on it. If it is used up before the end of the year, then there will be no khums on it. There is also something which I don't think you have it here in Tanzania, something called RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan. This is again, the parents there are encouraged to put money on the side for the education of their children. If they put money in this education saving plans, then again that amount would be exempt from the tax in that country. Now again, this is a saving for the future, not for that year. And so, just like our RSP, our ESP also would be eligible for khums. Whatever contribution you're putting in, you will have to take out khums on that amount also. At the time of maturity, your child, when he goes to the university, they will withdraw that amount. And for them, whatever you invested initially would be khums free because they paid khums on it. Whatever increment was in there, the saving, the profit that they have made, that will be considered that year's income. If it is used up by the child in their university expenses or their overall expenses, then there will be no khums. If they end up saving on that, there will be khums on it. Again, one more item, I'm not sure, but I'll just mention it here. There's something known as child allowance given in Canada, where the government pays parents every month an amount till they become 18 years old. And many parents just take that money, put it in their family income kitty. It's used up, basically. It becomes family's income. So that's okay, there's no problem there. And they will calculate their khums according to their family income that they have. But there are certain parents who don't use that money. They open a separate account from the time the child is born, and every month they put that money in there. And they say, we are saving it for the child when he wants to go or she wants to go to the university, we give this money to them. In that case, is there khums on that amount of child allowance? There is a difference of opinion between Ayatollah Khomeini on one hand and Ayatollah Khomeini and Ayatollah Sistani on the other hand. Ayatollah Khomeini believed that the wujub of khums is tied to the bulugh of the individual. If a person is not baligh, even if he has a lot of money, khums has not become wajib. But Ayatollah Khomeini and Ayatollah Sistani have a different view on this. They say that when it comes to khums, it's nothing to do with the age of the owner. If it is a saving at the end, it is wajib to pay khums on it. So even if the child is a minor, the guardian would have a duty to pay khums from that amount that they are keeping on the side for their children. Let me now go to one very practical example there, the issue of saving for the future. Saving for a residential home. System here probably is different from in the West. Very few people who have the ability to buy a house on cash basis. They have to accumulate money at least to be able to pay the down payment, and then they get the mortgage or the loan from the government, and they pay it off gradually many years. And so the question comes up, if a person is saving the money to buy the first residential home, which is a necessity. Is there khums on it? According to the fatawa that we have in general, since you are saving the money for the future, there will be khums on it. So if you save 5,000 one year, then 5,000 again second year, third year, fourth year, and the fifth year. Every year you save 5,000. In the fifth year you start, pay the more down payment, the first installment to buy the house. What you paid in that 1 year, that is khums free. Whatever you had accumulated in the last 4 years is the savings of the previous years used in the fifth year. And so there will be khums on that, because you didn't use it in those years when you saved it. You used it in the future. However, Al-Sistani on this matter, probably this mas'ala was brought to him that, in the West, this is not very easy to do. And they end up, paying 20% of the saving they are having for their house. Al-Sistani on this issue has given a ruling that if not buying a house is considered in your society as a sign of neglecting your duty towards your family. It depends on the urf where you live. Not buying a residential house in your society is considered to be neglect of your duty towards your family. Then if you save the money for that purpose, even if you are going to use it next year or 2 years or 5 years down the road, then that would be exempted from khums. This is a special mas'ala from Sayyid Sistani, which I haven't seen with others at all. However, you have to dedicate that for that purpose. You can't just say, okay, I have this lump sum saving and a portion of it is to buy a house. No, you have to really, this is between you and Allah, to dedicate that amount, that this I'm keeping separate in order to save enough to pay the initial down payment. If it is dedicated in that way, then according to Sayyid Sistani, it would not be eligible for khums. If you have a house, and yes, your residential home, it's part of your need, and there is no khums on it. But gradually, the value of the house increases. Do you have to consider the value of the house in your calculation for khums every year? No. As long as it is your residential home, you're living in it, even for 20 years you live in it, even if the value has gone up 20 times, 25 times, it doesn't matter. You don't pay khums on the increment of the value of the house, which is your residential property. What happens when you sell it? Whatever you paid for it, khums was down, there's no issue. Now after 20 years you sell it and you have a large amount of profit there. Again, if you sell it and your purpose is to buy another residential home, and if you are able to use that money within 1 year, you are okay. Even in that increased value of that sale of the house, because it came to you, but you used it up before the end of the year, then there will be no khums on it. A point to keep in mind here is that since the increment in the value of the sale of the house is not a normal income, you can actually look at it as 1 year from the day you got the money. So for example, you sold your house in October and you got a profit of $100,000 in it, and you plan to buy another house for yourself as a residential property. But your khums date is December, and you're planning to buy it in March. Since this is not a normal income, you can separate this, keep it separate and calculate from that day, October when you got it, till next October, and if it is not used up by that time, then there will be Khums. But if it is used up for allowable expense, then there will be no Khums on it. Another kind of saving which is exempted from Khums is the issue of what we call dehej, or dehej in Gujarati, that people buy for the marriage of the daughter. There is no Khums on it. So if they start accumulating money or jewelry or items, and they dedicated it for that purpose, that this is for the marriage of my daughter so and so, then even if that stays with the person, with the parents for many, many years, there is no Khums on it. Now this is the common masala of almost all the marajih, that when it comes to the marriage of the daughter, they do not extend that privilege for the marriage of the son. But Ayatollah Sistani has extended it. He says even if you save the money, gradually for the marriage expenses of your son, that also would be exempted from Khums, provided it is specifically dedicated for that purpose. The last remark I would make here is basically is the issue of division of Khums. Once a person is identified, the amount of Khums, the way it's distributed is divided into two equal portions. One is known as Sahm al-Imam, and the other is known as Sahm al-Sadat. Sahm al-Imam includes the Sahm of Allah, Rasul, and the Imam. And Sahm al-Sadat, basically we're talking about Yatim and Faqir and Ibn al-Sabil, the way the ayah talked about it. And that's where the equal division is done. And when it comes to Sahm al-Imam, this has to be handed over to the marja that you follow, or utilized according to his permission by individuals or organizations that you trust. It's a matter of trust, and this is your duty to go and figure it out. And that the purpose of Sahm al-Imam is mostly the issue of general charity or religious activities. When it comes to Sahm al-Sadat, since they are prohibited from receiving sadaqah and the wajib zakat, this portion would be used not for all the sadat, but the sadat who are mustahab. And by that term we mean those who are in need and poor. They are not able to make enough for their basic needs of being. And when it comes to Sahm al-Sadat, there is no issue of the ijaza. An individual has the right to disperse it wherever he finds it to be appropriate and applicable as far as Sahm al-Sadat is concerned. I think I have said enough here, and we will open for questions. Yes.
You talked about education savings in the context of the religion experience. But looking at it from the Ramadan experience, for example, some of us would like to pay next year's school fees ahead of time. Next semester was next year, not this year. So you are kind of caught with limbo. If you are closing the area on 31st of December, and let's say at the beginning of December you make the school fees for next semester, it starts next year. You have to get hold of that amount as a parent, and what about the child?
Okay, let me just repeat the question. The question is that if the parents who are sponsoring the children's education, let's say December end is their homestead, and they have to pay for the next semester, which is starting in January or February, but they do the payment before December. That's what I'm saying.
Another question which arises is when does the year for that fee start? Because you said there was a windfall income in housing. Now for the student, let's say the year starts in September. So how do you go about that? You separate that here for the child, or in order to, or this thing has not come up before?
Well, yes, as far as the first question is concerned, if the fees is paid, and this is for, you're saying basically January to March or April semester. Yeah, so this is for next year. I'm just looking at it. So you pay that in advance. Is what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. You're supposed to pay annually, but you pay by the semester.
And of course you have to pay before it.
Otherwise you might wind up spending.
No, I think in that case, what you have already paid is not sitting in your account for next year. As long as it's paid off for the coming semester, you should be okay.
What about the student?
It's not with him then. You said you're paying
to the student so that he or she can pay to the university. Or would she adjust her year to go with the university?
I think that would be more appropriate for them to plan in that way until they reach to the employment stage, and then they can readjust it.
Thank you very much.
Let me read one question here. This is from the sister side probably. The balance of the foodstuff, rice, end of the year. Do you take out Khums on that? Well, yeah, this is a very common masala which comes up. You see, when you look at the household items, whether it is rice or items like perfume bottles and things like that, there's a lot of confusion about it. It all depends on whether that item is resellable. If you open a perfume bottle and you use 20% of it, there's no way you're going to take this to the market and sell it for the remaining of its value. So whatever has been used and opened, although still it's not used completely, but it doesn't have resale value in a market, then it's used item, and the used item there is no Khums. But when you talk about rice, for example, you buy a kuni of 20 kilos, and you used only 10 kilo, and the 10 is remaining, you can still sow the kuni and sell it for 10 kilo in bazaar. It's still resellable. So in those kind of situations, you will calculate the value of that remaining product, which has a resale value in the market. But not things like perfume and things like that. Otherwise, even the sabun you are using in the washroom, you will have to see, or you use only half. No, I don't think you will go to that level and make your life so difficult. Okay, so remember, if it has in a common perception, resale value in the market, then Khums would be calculated from the remaining value, otherwise not.
Maulana, in Quran, we see so many ayats on Zakaat and Khums. There's only one or two ayat on Khums. And we still emphasize ourselves, give importance that we have to pay Khums. And we disregard the question of paying Zakat. Isn't Zakat also wajib on everybody?
Well, number one, I would refer you to something I had written a few years ago in detail about it. As far as the response to that question would be that mentioning of an item in Quran, number-wise, doesn't mean one is important and the other is less important. Hajj has been mentioned only once in the Quran. Fasting has been mentioned only once in the Quran. Doesn't mean Hajj is less wajib than Zakat or Namaz. So the number of occurrence of an item in the Quran doesn't mean one is important, other is less important. Khums is wajib, not on everyone and in everything. We looked at the conditions. If this condition is found, if there is a saving there, then there is khums, otherwise it's not. So yes, we would say Hajj is also wajib, but it's not wajib on everyone. Only when the conditions, the istita'at comes in. If person is physically and financially capable of traveling to Makkah, Hajj becomes wajib. So it is part of wajibat, but the wujub starts when the conditions are met. It's not even wajib for a person to sail to go for Hajj. It's not that you must save enough that Hajj becomes wajib on you. No. If you have saved enough, then the wujub will come in. So then we go to Zakat. Yes, Zakat is also wajib in our case. But there are certain conditions and items on which it is wajib. If it applies, then the wujub will be implemented. If it doesn't apply, the wujub will not be implemented. And so when we talk about the issue of Zakat, I would refer to go and look at that article. I think it was published here by Tabligh a few years ago. That when it comes to the issue of wajib Zakat, in the Shia fiqh, it only applies to certain items. Fortunately or unfortunately, not everything applies to the people here in Tanzania or those who are in the West. In some cases it applies, in some cases not. So you have to look and find out the cases where the wujub comes in. And yes, nobody denies that Zakat is not wajib, but it's only just wajib when the conditions of wujub are fulfilled. Question from the list here. My son or daughter gave me their salary every month. Give me their salary every month and I use it in a month. So in this month when the salary comes, the month will be over and only Khums debt and my Khums debt is passed. So do I need to pay Khums on it? This was a more administrative issue. So basically the son or the daughter comes and hands over the salary to the father or the mother. They manage the whole household, financial matters. Then yes, the mother would be in a way who handles it, and she will be paying Khums according to her own debt, because she is the one who gets this money and she is the one who is managing it. Any questions for the audience?
You said the life insurance premiums are an allowable Khums expense. Once the insured party passes away and the benefit goes to the beneficiary, does the beneficiary then have to pay Khums on it?
The beneficiary will consider that amount to be that year's income. If it is used up by the homestead, then there is no Khums on it. If they save on it, then there will be Khums. No, the insurance would not be part of the inheritance, because you see the policy holder was paying the premium and the beneficiary is someone else. That money didn't exist. The promise of that money existed, but the money didn't materialize until this person died. When the person died, this income is generated now. It comes to exist. And when it came to exist, it already had the name of the owner. So it doesn't become part of the estate of the deceased. It will become the property of the beneficiary of the insurance. Do you understand? That the person, the policy holder is paying money, But the actual amount is not, premium is just a kind of a deal between him and the company. That if this happens to me, you are going to pay this much amount to so and so.
Yeah,
That's only towards that promise.
I know, but I take out insurance to safeguard the interests of my family. And I know if I die, then it is already a saving for my wife and my children or whatever. So is that not a kind of inheritance that I am giving in advance when you have a life policy?
No, it technically doesn't count as inheritance. Because inheritance is what you leave behind. When you were alive, this didn't exist. Suppose you have a policy of $1 million. And it says when you die, this amount will be paid to the wife and the children. That $1 million doesn't exist. It's only the promise of that from the insurance to you in return for the monthly premium is there. So what you are leaving behind is a process will generate that, but it's not part of what you have at the moment.
But you know the process will generate.
Huh? Will generate, but when it generates, it doesn't have your name on it. But when it is generated, when it is existing, it doesn't have your name on it. It has the name of the beneficiary. So it will become their property is not part of the mirage.
Sir, forgive me, I just got a quick confusion here. In other words, this is not directly related to Khums, but if I buy insurance, I can dedicate the proceeds to anybody and it will not be considered part of my legacy. In other words, I can buy insurance and it wouldn't be considered even part of my 1/3 and I can say it's dedicated to you, the $1 million. And it will not be considered part of my will?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Unless you have a policy where it says that upon my death, this money will go into my estate. I don't know whether it is there something like this. Maybe an insurance broker can say that. So if it is, planned in that way, that it becomes part of the estate of the policy holder, then it will become part of, yes. But if somebody else is a beneficiary, then it doesn't become, because you can dedicate an outsider. You can say, Salaam Jamaat is going to get it. Is the family going to Jamaat and fight for it? No. It belongs to the Jamaat and it is general.
Exempted. What if I know the guy who is giving me the inheritance hasn't paid Khums?
If a person, there's a difference in the opinion of the late Abdullah Khoi and Sistani on this issue. If the deceased, out of negligence, did not pay Khums, and you are sure about it, that you are getting this money from somebody who did not pay Khums, then you will have to pay Khums before the division is done. According to Ayatollah Sistani, that's not the case. He says that person's responsibility, he is accountable for not doing or doing what he was supposed to do. So it's not wajib on the heirs to pay Khums in that.
And bringing back to Zakat issues, I've understood the concept of Khums. What is the meaning of Zakat? Can you please elaborate for us?
The word Zakat, you see, if you look at the way it has been used in the Quran, it means to, the word Zakat itself is purity. Okay, tazkiyah. That's tazkiyah of nafs. The word tazkiyah also comes from Zakat. And when you look at the ayat of Quran on this issue, there is a confusion about the wajib zakat and the recommended charity. If you look at Surah Tawbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about wajib zakat, He doesn't even use the term zakat. There the word is إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتِ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and the whole list goes on. So there the word sadaqat has been used, plural of sadaqa, for the meaning of wajib zakat. And this is where we realize that, the ayat of Quran, when it talks about these matters, it's not just simply we look at the translation and then go with it. The reason why zakat has been repeated again and again, along with namaz, is nothing to do with this, whether it's wajib or mustahab. The purpose of repeating namaz and zakat is actually to emphasize an overall, outlook of Islam, that salvation doesn't only depend on fulfilling the rights of Allah, which is exemplified by Salaam. You also have to fulfill the rights of the people, which is exemplified in the term zakat. So these two words have been used in a symbolic sense to convey a different message about the overall, sometimes people say, Allah push then I do whatever I want. No. And so when we look at, for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen in this famous incident in Surah Ma'idah, when he gives away the ring to the beggar in ruku, there the term zakat has been used. But it's not wajib zakat at all. It is actually sadaqah. So in that example you see it is sadaqah given by Ali in ruku, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, and give zakat in the state of وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. So Quran uses the word zakat for sunnah, sadaqah, charity. It uses the word sadaqah for wajib zakat. And so we have to look at all the ayat. When you look at Prophet Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awsani, He has enjoined me to establish prayers and give zakat. The prayer done by Isa ibn Maryam was not the Islamic prayer that we did. They were doing ibadat of Allah, but every Sharia has their own system. When he talks about the term zakat, there is not the zakat of the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when you look at the Quran, you have to look at how the words have been used in different forms. Yes.
Something called ihtiyat wajib on the wealth of business. Is that true? And if it is true, what is the meaning of ihtiyat wajib?
That's Sistani's opinion on that issue. When they talk about the wajib, zakat and fiqh, the majority view is that gold and silver coins, and there are 4 animals and 3 crops where it is wajib. Other than that, it's not wujub. It is just considered to be voluntary sadaqah or zakat in the meaning of our sadaqah, the way we use it. Then the issue comes up if people have business, and when it comes to their mahr at the end of the year, their majority says recommended to pay zakat from that. Ayatollah Sistani goes a step further. He says ihtiyati wujub. Ihtiyati wujub means he doesn't have a dalil to make it wajib. Ihtiyat means on a basis of precaution. He says we treat that as a wajib because there is no dalil for it. So on the basis of precaution, he is the one who believes that when it comes to the merchandise in a trade or a business, at the end of the year you have to calculate the value it needs to zakat. Use the mic there, please. I didn't hear it.
मौलाना ये हज के ऊपर भी पूरा पूरी वो होता है, पूरी प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर खम्स करना पड़ता है हज के लिए।
Khums, हज पे।
हाँ, फिर आपको हज सही होता है या नहीं होता? पूरी प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर
मसला यह है कि आप जब हज करते हैं आप पर कोई कर्जा नहीं होना चाहिए। So if you not paid home, then you are in a way you are mahroom. And so you have to make sure all dues, whether it's Khums or Zakat or whatever it is applicable on you, you have to give that obligations before you go for Hajj. So if that means that you have to give away
आपके प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर अपना खम्स निकालना मिल जाते हैं
जहाँ जहाँ वाजिब है। So I can't say पूरे पर, it depends कहाँ कहाँ वाजिब था जहाँ अदा नहीं हुआ है। So what people then do is they sit down, do the calculation. They cannot practically pay the whole thing before they go for Hajj. So then they are told at least for the entire expense of the Hajj, take out Khums with the commitment that when you come back you gradually pay out for whatever was lying on.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I ask you 2-3 questions together? Okay, a person who has never paid Khums and has also bought houses or house. Now he regrets and he wants to pay Khums. Firstly. Secondly, a person is running an institution, charitable institution. The money is not over all the time, money is coming in. So has he to fix a date in the year to pay Khums? And is there any hadith whereby the benefit of paying Khums is mentioned, that if a person pays Khums, his wealth will be secured or something like that?
The first one, if a person has never paid Khums and then he realizes this is an obligation that he has to deal with, there is a process. That person has to sit down. Majority of the people don't keep records. But if there is somebody who has the ability to go back and come with a rough estimate of how much he has gradually earned, how much he might have spent every year, how much he would have saved every year. If he can come with that rough figure, then that would be the way to deal with it. If he cannot do that, and it's not easy, in most cases I hear, they say we don't have any records, we can go back and look at it, then it is a difficult step. Then they have to look at their entire, whatever they own, whatever value of their assets, and then they have to pay Khums out of it. If that becomes difficult, it's not practical, then they have to sit down and do musalaha with the marja or the authorized wakil of the marja who would forgive and just allow whatever they can pay. So there's all different situations for that. The second question about charity, I didn't really understand that fully. If the person is running a charity organization, do they have to pay Khums in the charity?
People pay. They pay Salaam and everything, right? To help poor people, right? And he's running that institution to help different people, but the money is lying there, so has he to fix a date for a year when he has to pay Khums?
I don't think, because that's not his money. It's an amanat to be paid to those who are needy and poor. So there will be no Khums on that. Okay, there's a question here. I have a debt of $100,000 and with an agreement to pay $20,000 each month. Sometimes I do not manage to save by end of year, so pay after a year and a half. Do I have to pay Khums on what has been accumulated at the end of the year? Well, the best way would be just to pay off whatever they have at that time. Even if it's not the full amount, then their savings will be reduced and the Khums will become less. But if they keep it for payment in the middle of the new year, then there will be Khums applicable on it. A related question to that is, can I go for ziyarah in this situation? For ziyarah, there is no condition like that. It's only the issue of Hajj, which is different.
Let's say in the first day you pay your Khums. Year 2 you have a loss. Can you carry forward that loss in year 3? If the loss for year 2 is, let's say, $50,000. Year 3 you have a profit where your Khums amount is $20,000, but you had a loss in year 1. Can you carry forward into the second year? That's the first question. The second one is, if your business and your personal is together, and the business takes out a dividend, net of Khums, and you receive the dividends net of Khums, is then Khums wajib on you the following year? Or then if the business gives you dividends without deducting Khums and gives you the gross amount, and then you're responsible for it?
Okay, the second one is the easiest one, answer first. That one. If from your business account Khums is already paid in it, you don't have to worry about it.
The beneficiaries don't have to pay?
No. Because this on this amount, the Khums has already been paid. Coming back to the first question, you can only deduct the loss from one sector of your source of income for the loss in another sector for the same year. So you can't carry it on like the secular income tax system. So you can't go back. But suppose 1 year you had savings in one business, loss in the other, then you can take the saving from one as a compensation for the loss in the other.
Moment.
Yes.
I mean, Khums is paid, but there's same imam and same sadat. And you mentioned it is for yatim and miskin and the wayfarers. Is it sadat wayfarers or yatim or sadat, or is it yatim in general?
You had to look at the tafsir of our imams on this ayah. And there is no dispute among the fuqaha and the Shia Muslim on this issue. When it comes to these three terms there in that ayah, it refers to the Banu Hashim, the Hashimi, Yatim, and Ibn Sabi. And not to others. See, the whole issue is that the Banu Hashim are barred from all other charities. And therefore this is separated. And it's not a matter of dispute. Of course, when it comes to the first half of it, Sahmi Imam, that can be given to anyone. So all non-Salat have a share in that, in Sahmi Imam. Because Sahmi Imam is not only for building masjid and maqbar. See, the problem is we have become kind of a dependency syndrome in our community. Sahmi Imam was mostly used for religious activities, not necessarily for building structures. And most of the masajid, if you see, go back in history, whether here or South Asia or Middle East, the structures were more from the tabarru'at and charity of the individuals.
Yeah, but Sayyid, supposing you have flooded in India or Pakistan, do you have to send it to Marja, or can you pay just direct?
No, you
require permission for that.
For Sami Salah,
or Sami Imam.
For Sami Imam, yes.
But the thing is needed urgently. How do you do it?
Well, you know, I think most of this organization, whether it's World Federation or Africa Federation, you know, they have ijazah in one form or another. So it's a matter of how it's being managed rather than the issue itself. As for the foodstuff, you haven't been taking out homes, what do you do? Is it wajib on the husband and wife as he is the provider? The wujub is on the husband. It's not the responsibility of the wife. And again, remember what I mentioned. We are not talking about every item which has been used. Only those items which has a resale value in the market. Only then the wujub of khums will come in. There's a question here. Online. It says, is mortgage payments for home or car buying homes deductible or not? Yes, it is an annual expense. There is no khums on that.
Online. Let's say you give homes to an organization that you trust. Does your obligation stop as soon as they give you a receipt, or do you have to wait a receipt from the Marja's office?
From the religious point of view, once you give it to an organization which has the vikala, your duty is over. You don't have to wait for that receipt.
But despite the fact that they promise you that they will such a thing.
Well, then you have to be careful next time in dealing with it. But it's not a shari masala, it's more about, you know, how you manage it or deal with it.
If a company is owned either by a group of mu'mineen or it is a makhlut, and every year they make profits, but the declaration of the dividends is not a fixed policy, it's not annually, maybe it is after 2 years, maybe after 3 years, but the profit is there. What do? Do you pay when you get the dividend, because it's not in your control?
You will pay when you get it. How do we calculate homes of jewelry, wedding jewelry, and luxury items? Most of these items are used. Even if they are used once, it's used item. When an item is used, classified as used, there is no home.
Can you throw some light on the concept of paying homes on only new savings? I think it's not very well understood in the ladies.
When we talk about paying homes on given the items and products, again let me clarify, new and unused items. Why homes becomes applicable. If it is used, then there is no homes on it. Even if it's used once, it is classified as used item, and then when it's used, then there is no homes on it. As far as income is concerned, any new saving, homes will be wajib on it. sometimes what happens is people say, okay, I have $10,000 saving, I paid $2,000 as Khums. Next year I have $8,000 still remaining in my account. Do I have to pay Khums on it? The answer would be yes and no. It all depends on whether this is remaining from last year, or did that 8,000 go down to 6,000? And again, you added into it, when it comes back at the end of the year, 8,000. So the 2,000 is actually new saving, and Khums would be wajib on that. So it's a matter of, remainder from last year or a new saving. If it's a new saving, Khums would be wajib.
Can I ask a question since that one has come up? I had a savings of $10,000. I paid Khums on it, and then I bought gold out of it. So what happens to the gold? Because now it's just sitting there.
Because it was bought by the money in which the Khums was already paid, there is no Khums. No, unless you buy coins. Then Zakat can run. So if you buy the silver or gold coins from South Africa, then that's the calculation. You look at it, and then you see an item on which Khums has been paid once. There is no Khums again on that same item, even if it stays with you for 10 years. If Zakat, let's say you bought coins, silver or gold coins, and it reached to the nisab, the amount where you have to pay Zakat on it, you will have to pay Zakat on it the next year also, until you come to the lowest, nisab. Huh? The nisab levels, I don't have it here with me. It's a little bit, weight of gold and silver or so forth. I don't remember that.
Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid. When you are calculating Khums on unused new items, would you use 20% or 25%? Because they will be an additional to the money from which you are paying.
No, you just go by.
So if I had $1,000 and goods worth $100, I would calculate Khums on 1,120% and take it out from my $1,000.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're making life very complicated, more and more. No, you just go with whatever is there.
Assalamu alaikum. There are some people like that never ever paid Khums, but now they are inspired to do so. So if it's the first time a person wants to pay Khums, how will he pay since he has not paid for all these years? Can you throw some light on it?
Well, sister, we already answered that, but I'll summarize it again. They have to sit down, look at if they have good records of their income and savings for so many years, then that will be the way to find out the estimate, of the Khums that they have to pay. If they don't have records, cannot come with the approximate figure, then they have to look at the value of all their assets, and then pay Khums out of it. And if that becomes practically a difficult situation, then they will have to approach the marja himself or the wakil to do musalihah, which means to get a portion of it forgiven, so they can start fresh and deal with that from next year.
Assalamu alaikum. Basically, I have two questions. One is related to business, and that is most priority. The thing is, we have a running business for a couple of years. Right now, the state it's a hodgepodge kind of thing because we sell over 2,000 items which are small in size, and to keep a track of it is a little difficult. My father-in-law started the business, but then later on he handed it over to one of his cousins, but not on ownership basis. He just handed it over to take care. Since then, we have no account of the stock, what comes in, what goes out. We only know that each month how much profit we made, but then it keeps replacing. So we have no proper account of what comes in and what goes out. Now that my husband has taken over, he doesn't know how to take out the khums on it. So this is one question, and the other question is, what about a person who was employed and then he or she buys certain things which are still new, and after a period of time, after a couple of years, is unemployed and has no personal source of income to take out khums? What about that? Thank you.
For the first question, I would suggest if you can ask your husband to come and see me. This is a very specific example. You can sit down and ask more details and then probably come to a solution. As far as the second item, we were talking about a situation where a person, khums was wajib on him, but he didn't pay, and now he is not in a financial state to pay at all. Well, this is, where the issue of musahara will come in. He can go and explain his situation to the marja and inshallah get a relief on it from that matter.
The gold coins. When you say gold coin, do you mean anything that is solid gold? It doesn't have to be specific coin form.
No, when I say gold coins, I mean gold coins. I'm not talking about biscuits or ignores and things like that. No, we're talking about coins.
Okay, so if it's solid gold that is in a...
Then it's not an item for zakat.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Going back to that first question, when the beneficiary of the insurance wealth comes in, let's say the beneficiary are 4 children, and it is not specified in the beneficiary how the money will be given. Let's assume that it will be equal. And he passes away. Of the 4 children, there are 3 boys, 1 boy and 3 girls. Will it follow the Sharia masala to do the division? It was not his money in the first place. So how would that work out?
No, the inheritance laws will not apply there. And so if it was not specified, they're just 4 individuals, they get equal share.
Question asked here. Can you please ask if there is khums on money not sure if khumsed? The money is lying with someone, but the person is not sure whether this was khumsed, maybe in a cupboard somewhere.
Well, if you were not sure, I don't think it is wajib. There's a very practical question. If a person starts earning middle of the year, in September, where this fixed December is his end year for khums, well then what this person will do is calculate the income from September to December and deal with it that way, and then it goes from year to year. There was a request to write down my email for those who might have questions. It's Muhammad, M-U-H-A-M-M-A-D, 57. I'm not 57 years old yet. It's my birth year. 57 at rogers.com. ROGERS.com. Again, a very practical question. If some gold jewelry has remained new, unused for many years, and the khums is on that jewelry is supposed to pay in terms of gold itself or money. You have the option. If you have 5 items and you want to pay in kind, you can do that. When it comes to, if you choose money, then you have to go by the current value of the item.
Salaam. Is there a Khums on investment policy, especially when you invest in endowment policies, like, and you have some proceeds after, let's say, 20 years? Is there a Khums on that before you die?
If it's a and you are the, so basically it's something you are investing into it.
Yeah, it's a normal monthly investment we do, we think. And then you do your life insurance at the same time, the investment element is there as well. So you don't die, and you get something out of it after 10 or 20 years. You get your proceeds, you see. So you have investment X amount of money, and you get a little bit more, you see. Over a period of, let's say,
when you get it at the end,
yeah,
then there will be a Khums on it because you invested it in that way for yourself.
Alright, so will it be Khums on all the amount,
Yes.
or will it be what proceeds the what do you call the investment that you have done over 20 years? And
On the investment, because the premium that you're paying for that is a fees for it.
okay.
Whereas the investment part of it is something which is yours.
Alright, so but if you are making monthly payments or yearly payments, you have taken that monthly or yearly payment into account already.
Or if you taken it into account, then only in the increment of that.
So whatever the profit you make, that's